Oh, you can taste it. It's the last week of February. The temperature isn't completely freezing outside. We're almost there, boys and girls. We've almost made it to spring. How are we doing on this fine Monday? Evan and Tiki. Tiki out today. He returns tomorrow. And so I asked this question to Sean Morach. I asked this question to myself. I asked this question to everybody listening at home right now or in their car. Are you worried? Because we are a week into spring training, and both of our baseball teams have questions that can worry some. First, we have Sean Manaea. It is an oblique issue. He will not throw for a couple of weeks. The hope is we see him in mid-April. Are you worried? Giancarlo Stanton is on a jet plane back to New York. The tennis elbow's still bothering him. God knows when we'll see him. Are you worried? Jason Dominguez can't catch a fly ball in left field. Are you worried? So as we sit here, a week into spring training, still more than a month away before opening day, we as Met fans, we as Yankee fans, ask ourselves a very important question. Are you worried?
Yes.
You are worried?
Very worried.
About the Dominguez part, the Giancarlo part, or all of the above?
First of all the above. Dominguez, I'd rank as last. This is what some might say spring training is for. Let's figure out he's not a natural left fielder. Let's figure that out. Nonetheless, I don't want his defensive liabilities costing him at-bats. But I'm very worried. Anytime Giancarlo Stanton is getting on an airplane before the rest of the team is and heading back, that's usually not a good sign. And if I was a Met fan like yourself, Evan, we've already lost Montas for God knows how long. Sean Manaea, and I know it's the opposite side of his throwing arm or whatever, anytime you're having anything, oblique, lat, any of that related, I'm very worried we're not going to see him for quite some time either.
Well, let's start with your worry,
okay,
and I will address my worry, because we all have worries as we sit here on February 24th. The Giancarlo Stanton thing is almost impossible not to worry about. The fact that he's coming back to New York, the fact that this elbow issue, the dueling tennis elbow issue, has been a problem for a while, and it's continuing to be a problem as a worry. But the other thing that we always have to take into account, and we will when we talk about Sean Manaea as well, is, all right, who replaces him? And what really does worry me about the Yankee offense is that they got a lot of guys who, if things break right, they should have a decent lineup. But if you take one or two guys away, where's the depth? Like right now, if you're a Yankee fan and Giancarlo is not ready for opening day, okay, who's the opening day DH? Is it Everson Pereira coming off Tommy John surgery? Is it DJ LeMahieu with Oswald Peraza playing third?
Ben Rice.
Is it Ben Rice?
Probably.
That's where my worry is. A, Stanton has an injury history, and B, I don't know if the Yankees are fully equipped to deal with losing him for a while.
This has been my concern, not the specific injury, but my concern when we placed our, ironically, you're calling it worries, our big predictions for the year 2025. And I said, I have this weird feeling we're going to be all hyped up for baseball season, and both of our teams fall short. And Tiki asked that question why to me. And my point, and he didn't like hearing this at the time, was injuries to their main guys, because Stanton, and to a lesser extent Judge for now, have a history of not staying healthy. And they were able to get by last year. Stanton missed a minimal amount of time when he did. They still had Juan Soto there. Their depth is a problem. And Giancarlo Stanton, everything you hear now from where we were last week with double tennis elbow to flying back to New York, this sounds ominous, Evan. And I have a feeling we're looking up at fireworks in the sky celebrating our nation's independence before we see Stanton. More on that later. And I don't know how you survive that without reaching into your pocket once more to acquire somebody else.
You want someone still sitting in free agency?
Can I give my name?
Of course. If the guy's still out there, they're available. And if they're still available, then bringing them up on February 24th is a hell of a lot more realistic than naming a guy on a different roster who you have to trade for when we're not even sure if that team has the proclivity to want to deal that guy.
I'm going through summer wear right now, Evan. I'm about to go on a vacation in a couple weeks, and I pulled out a shirt yesterday that dawned on me.
Yes.
It simply said dogs on it with a chain.
Oh, come on.
Where's Doogie? He's a free agent, and I think he actually helps in two ways. Number one, if you get to opening day, you cannot afford with Stanton out to lose Jason Dominguez's bat.
Right.
And if you're very worried about his fielding in left field, well, Doogie could go play left, and we know he could play good defense. Have Jason Dominguez be your opening day DH. And number two, even if you want to keep Dominguez out there, for lack of a better, idea, I'd rather Verdugo in the lineup every day than Everson Pereira right now. Doogie's available. You have familiarity. Let's go get him.
And he can grow his beard out.
Yes, he can. Woof, woof, woof.
I mean, we could get a different Verdugo. It's funny. Alex Verdugo's year last year, to me, was overall, like, not a good year. He did not have a good statistical year. He got worse as the season went on. He was one of the worst offensive outfielders in baseball.
I wanted him benched. Now I want him back.
But you are actually right. I mean, you're right, because when there are injuries in February, I think what we have to do, and we'll get into the Met worries in a second, and you'll see how, at least in my opinion, there's kind of a difference in approach that each team should take. But when you're going to be down a guy, and potentially maybe down the guy for a while, this is actually a great opportunity to bring somebody in where it only costs you money.
Yes.
Trading for someone in February and March is desperation. Most teams are not looking to trade people right before the season starts. So picking up Alex Verdugo, who's still a free agent and is still available, coming off a terrible season, and basically saying to him, look, Doogie, it's a lot different this year. You are a fourth outfielder. You are a guy who may get some at-bats. You may not. We'll see how it goes. Does offer you insurance, because my biggest worry with the Yankee lineup, like on paper, the Yankee lineup can be decent. I can rationalize it kind of easily. Like Goldie bounces back. Cody gives you a similar year to last year. Like Volpe takes a little bit of progress. Jazz Chisholm has a full year here. I'm very high on Jazz.
Austin Wells.
Judge. Like the lineup's fine.
Yeah.
But they don't have a lot of depth. And taking Big G out of the middle of the lineup, it changes things.
And shame on you if you're looking at the Stanton injury right now, flying back to New York going, look, we could survive until he gets back. Maybe, but can you survive while he's out? And dare I say, Goldschmidt gets hurt, causing, Bellinger to have to go to first, or Belly gets hurt, or Judge gets hurt.
Right.
How are you assuming the rest of these starters in the lineup are going to be completely healthy till Stanton comes back?
So I'm glad you made that point. So let's shift rather briefly to Sean Manaea and the Mets. And we'll hear from Yankee fans and Met fans to begin the program today, 888-808-1019. And I guess we could further the Are You Worried question. And we could ask that question a little bit later on to Thomas Jefferson, Aloysius Lugauer, and every other Knick fan in our audience right now. Are you worried? We could even include that question to the 12 Net fans out there.
Yeah.
The tank is dead. Are you worried? We could even include Giant fans. Matthew Stafford's agent's going to get to talk to everybody. You may screw this thing up and actually acquire a 37-year-old quarterback when you're nowhere close to winning.
Are you excited?
Are you worried?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to frame that a little differently.
Are you excited? Yes, I am. Very much so.
My point is we'll get to all of that as the show rolls on, but you said something very smart.
Ranger fans, are you worried?
Well, you give up 5 goals in the first period to the Buffalo Sabres. The answer is yes. But you brought up a great point about it's not one guy getting hurt, it's who's next. So let me address Sean Manaea. Can you ask me if I'm worried?
Are you worried about Sean Manaea?
On the surface, no, because it's an oblique issue. Carlos Mendoza, who I think is very upfront. This is not the same manager as Mickey Callaway or Terry Collins, not to bash him, but there's felt like a dishonesty in the past with the Mets. It doesn't feel like there is one with Carlos. So when he says, hey, it's not really a serious oblique, he could actually throw maybe in a week, maybe 14 days, maybe 21 days, we'll see. I hear that and I say, okay, like Sean Manaea being back in the middle of April is not crazy. And if you're a geek like myself and you look at the Mets schedule and you go day by day, you realize, wow, the Mets could get away with a 5-man rotation instead of a 6-man rotation. They could play with the off days. Bottom line is Sean Manaea may miss a handful of starts. And when you frame it that way, it's not a big deal. And so from that standpoint, no, I'm not worried. But here's where I am worried.
Okay.
They've already lost Frankie Montas.
Yep.
They now have lost Sean Manaea, and Mendy describes it as it could be minor. It may not be. Manaea may not pitch till June. We don't know. Just because he says, yeah, he could throw it a few weeks doesn't mean he will. And so now if you're down 2 of your starters, then you start to say, well, I am getting worried. Sure. Griffin Canning is one thing. If we're looking at Brandon Waddell, that's another thing. And I go back to your point about Verdugo. Verdugo's sitting right there. If the Yankees want to call him and sign him, they can do that. Jose Quintana is sitting right there. There will be a day, maybe 2 weeks from now, maybe 5 days from now, where Alex Verdugo is not a phone call away, where Jose Quintana is not a phone call away.
Damn right.
So am I worried? On the surface, no, but in 2 weeks, I could easily be panicking. When we get a tweet from Mike Puma that says Kodai Senga has an ingrown toenail, I will be worried if we get that. And so I think if you're the Mets and the Yankees, you can very easily write a check for a backup plan. You can write a nice little check to say, all right, let me bring Doogie in just in case. And if you're the Mets, you can do the same thing with Sexy Q. You can say, look, I can make this rotation work if I'm just minus Montas and just minus Manaea for a few weeks, but what if I'm not? And so from that standpoint, I'm worried. That's why, on a scale from 1 to 10, my worry around Manaea sits at around a 5. It's somewhere in the middle. But my worry with Big G is probably somewhere near an 8, because I hear Stanton go back to New York, and I think we all assume, oh, my God, we may not see him for months. With Manaea, there is still that possibility. This is just a nagging couple of weeks, and he's back in the middle of April. What say you?
And for anybody that moves, note, how good could doctors be in Florida? We're always flying these guys back to New York. That's always a concern I have.
You know the reason.
I'm kidding. All right. Now, Evan, look, here's why you should be worried. You called me out on being dead wrong last year on something. And I
did.
was dead wrong.
What was I? Okay? What did I call you out on and that I was right about?
Yeah,
I like to hear this.
A couple weeks past
Time out. All right. Time out. Before you continue, it's 2:12. We're sitting here on a Monday, the final week of February. Tommy, is it going through your brain? What's going through my brain? Go ahead.
It absolutely is going through my brain. There is, well, first of all, that shirt you're wearing, the Sweet 16's down the hall. It's in the other hall. And you're not wearing something.
Oh, the L.
Yeah.
Get it for me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
As you're about
I'm not getting anything for you. You get it yourself.
Paulie Rosenberg, you're the producer.
You don't,
today. Can
you
get
don't
me the
work
L?
for him. You get it yourself.
I'll get it.
Hey, can you get up and get it? I'll stall for 30 seconds.
Right above you. You see the rope hanging. There you go.
You know what reminded me, by the way? It's not that I'm on top of him wearing the L that he's still paying his dues on for the Eagles and Saquon winning the Super Bowl. It's the fact that Sean said, I was wrong about something from a year ago, and it made me think, wow, L-worthy, and you weren't wearing your L. All right, Paul Rosenberg has just placed the L around Sean's neck. You look very good.
Thank you.
And now that the L is around your neck, please continue your point on where I schooled you last year.
Evan, we were a couple weeks before spring training, and the Mets did something that you wanted them to do. They signed J.D. Martinez.
I remember that.
And Tiki was out, and you and I had this exact argument. Do you remember what I said to you?
It doesn't matter. They suck anyway.
Right. How many more wins is it going to tack on? Right?
Yes.
And clearly, J.D. Martinez at points last year, yes, he had his down moments, was a huge reason for some of the Met wins that ended up being the difference in them making the playoffs or not.
He didn't have a great year. He did hit a walk-off home run. He had some success, and the locker room impact was pretty big.
Right. Okay, so I say that to say, you have made the case on this show that the National League is a lot more difficult path than the American League, correct?
Yes.
We have no idea where the Mets will finish in this NL East, and you were very fearful, maybe fearful is the wrong word, Phillies and Braves, very good teams, yes?
Yes.
Padres lurking behind the Dodgers, yes?
Every game matters, yes.
Yeah, it sounds silly over 162 games to worry about 3 or 4 starts if that's it at a minimum, and then you throw in the Montas ones. But you signed Sean Manaea, and you, we're going to get the audio in a little bit, have high faith in him in the top of the rotation. 3 or 4 starts could result in 2 more losses, could result in them out of the playoffs, which is why, to me, I would be worried if I was the Mets because your rotation was already a question mark to begin with.
It's absolutely a fair point. Every game matters, and the Mets are going to be in a dogfight. I'm not even talking about to win the division, to make the playoffs. The league is very good. The league is very tough. And so when I sit here and tell you, hey, if it turns out to be as minor as Mendy described, we're really only talking about 3 or 4 starts in April. It's not that big of a deal. You're right. If you lose those 3 games, and that's 89 wins instead of 92 wins, that could be the difference between making the playoffs and not. But I'm also realistic to know that signing Jose Quintana comes at a 110% tax rate. And I don't think the Mets are going to do it until they feel an air of desperation, which right now they don't have. What I have right now is some worry. My worry is they're already down Montas. They're going to be down Manaea for a period of time, hopefully not that long, but they're another injury away from going into the real bowels of the depth. Like we all heard all offseason about depth from David Stearns.
I don't think that's right.
It's not even close.
What? Bowels of the depth.
Yeah, the bowels of the depth, yeah. I think I got that nailed.
No, I think it's reversed. I think it's the depth of the bowels.
No.
There is no such thing as depth, Evan.
Depth.
No,
yeah,
you can't
pitching
go.
Depth.
No, you can't. No, you can't go to a depth though. If I said I went to the depth of the ocean, I'm in the ocean. It's the depth. It's you're going to the bowels, so you're going deep into the bowels.
Bowels of the earth is a phrase that refers to Earth's deep interior. What I'm referring to is the deep interior of the Mets' pitching depth. So it makes complete sense. Like, for example, their initial pitching depth was... I'm explaining it.
I'm just laughing.
Their initial pitching depth was Paul Blackburn, Griffin Canning, and Tyler McGill.
Yeah.
Names most of us are familiar with. If they have to go into the bowels of more depth, you're talking about guys that, no offense, Sean, I'm not trying to pick on you. Loogie's a Met fan, too. He has no idea. Guys you've never heard of.
Sure.
You haven't heard of Justin Hagenman, have you? You haven't heard of Brandon Waddell? Those are the next guys in the depth, and that's where, as a Met fan, I get a little worried if Brandon Waddell is making starts in April. So my worry exists because the Mets are already testing their depth. And if they have to go deeper into their depth, like any team, you start to get worried about how deep you're going. Does that make sense? Max Kranick would be another name.
It does make sense. I will say, and thankfully for Met fans, if Loogie is right, at least you have Clay Holmes instead of Max Fried there. Right?
Well, look, I know you're trying to pick on Tommy.
I'm not. It's too
What
early
I
to do
will
that.
tell you
Nobody
is
needs
that, shockingly enough, I'm very excited about Clay Holmes.
Oh, really?
I am.
Of course.
You should be.
Well, I watched his start on Saturday. He's added that new kick changeup that you're not familiar with. You want to know why? He didn't throw it as a Yankee. He was sticking with his, well, whatever. I'm not going to get into this. But the point is,
His non-strikeout stuff as a closer?
the point is, I think Clay Holmes can be decent. But my worry, to your point, is what if there are more injuries? And that's what we're staring. Now, the third thing that we did not address deeply, but some Yankee fans are concerned about in the are you worried portion of our day, is Jason Dominguez in left field. You are telling us as a Yankee fan that despite Dominguez's issues last year briefly, and even now in spring training, you are not concerned about his ability to play left field.
I mean, I'm mildly concerned. I can't eliminate total concern, but here's the thing. It is the beginning of spring training still. I would like him not to be going through these pains, but if he's going to do it, I'd rather it now. My concern is more the fact, actually I had this argument with my dad, he's a center fielder, not a left fielder.
Right.
And I don't know why from the jump, outside of the fact that they just got Bellinger and he can only really play center in the outfield, why already they're moving a guy who should have been their center fielder for the next 10 years and moving to the left. And I am having Gleyber Torres second to short nightmares here, even though Gleyber Torres originally was a shortstop. It just feels like they're almost purposely playing him out of position, and that's screwing the whole thing up. That being said, an outfielder's an outfielder. You have a month to figure this out. If you get to March 26th and he's still not tracking fly balls, then yes, Evan, I will declare I'm worried. I'm going to hope he gets it together, and this is the purpose of spring training.
We will get to your calls, Yankee fans, Met fans. We have different things here in the early going that you could potentially be worried about. We'll hear from you at 888-808-1019. And I have been told, I don't know the details, but I have been told that Sean Morash and Tommy Lugauer, they rarely work well together. They usually hate each other. Both would like to put the hammer down on little old me and blame me for some of the issues facing New York Mets camp. We'll take a listen to why coming up.